Hello there, my beautiful and lovely gamers. My name is Joe, and today we're talking and take a look at Kephrii as a contenders players. Is the Overwatch League material? How did he do? I'm very sorry this video comes out way late, but that's because, well, really, I reviewed his matches as he was playing them and around the time that he was playing in contenders, and then I wrote down all my notes and I started making a script, and then just other videos and life happens and so on. And well, then we're making it now instead. So I've been revisiting my notes, taking a little bit of a look at some old VODs, kind of checking out a couple of scenarios just to remember that I remember them clearly in my head. And well, then we're going to talk about how the Kephrii doing contenders. What is the Overwatch League material? And that's what we're going to break down today. So if you've never broken down anyone ever in something like an Overwatch League setting or for a team setting, I can give you 5 pointers that you can like to look at. You want to look at the experience of the players. We do know Kephrii played early season of Overwatch in competitively, and he actually performed quite well. Then we take a look at his contender. Of course, he did play in contenders now for GE Pantheon, so that's kind of what we will be using as a main quote-unquote evidence that that's the recent time we've seen him compete. And then of course he also was a previous Halo player, professional I believe, but we'll not talk too much about that. Then we take a look at the player's mechanics, but on every single hero that he's supposed to be playing. Also generally his mechanics in the game and how good he is at the game. And I don't believe that anyone can question the fact that Kephrii is a aim god and he has incredible aim, especially on Widowmaker and Ashe and so on. He can take some real difficult shot and perform on the highest level accuracy wise and mechanically wise on some of those heroes. Then we take a look at hero pool, and this is important for some teams and not others. Some teams are looking for a specific one trick or a guy that specializes in one specific part to fulfill a strategy or fill a weakness on the team, while other teams are looking for, the Tviks of the world, which is kind of these guys that can play practically anything. You want a little bit of off tank, I can play some break, I can play some hit scan, I can play some projectile, and then I can perform at the highest level on the multitude of different heroes. While some other said team needs a specialist, a tracer specialist, a Widow specialist, or some other specialist and a specific hero. Then we look at team play, how team oriented is the player, how resource heavy is the player. And again, this is something that is difficult to say because it depends on the individual org. Some people need, if you remember, for example, League of Legends, just to bring up a League of Legends experience, like kind of example, a Faker for SKT Telecom, right? He is this individual god, and then they build a roster with people that they gave team play that supported their carry, while some other orgs might look for, the fakes of the world. So you might look for a star player that might be resource heavy but can carry and pop off, and some other teams are looking for more of these supportive figures because that's their playstyle or how they set up stuff. So that's a little bit difficult to say. We're going to definitely again take a look at how Kephrii is as a team player, and then you of course want to look at dedication. Is this guy dedicated? Is he willing to put in the hours? If you have certain weaknesses, for example, team play or whatever, is he willing to dedicate time and hours and learn? Is he willing to learn and listen and take feedback and criticism? And that's what we're going to take a look at today. So, Kephrii is a Widowmaker specialist. No way going around that. He's a hit scan player, main DPS role. He did play heroes such as Widowmaker, Ashe, a little bit of Tracer, and also some Zarya during his contender matches. And well, how did his team do? That's the first thing that we're going to take a look at. How did GE Pantheon do, so we know how he placed on his team? Well, they ended in 6th place in contenders. However, we need to look at the 5th place, the team that was right above them, had the exact same score. Xavier Esports was 12 and 8 together with GE Pantheons. Now the 4th spot, right, so 2 over, was Phoenix. Now Phoenix was beaten by GE Pantheons, and they placed 12, 1, and 7, meaning 6th place, which was GE Pantheon, and 4th place, the only thing that differentiated those two teams was one draw, one tie, was the only thing that differentiated those on map scores. So that's how they performed, fairly decently. They had a very specific score. If you go back and watch some of the VODs, you'll see a lot of time that they play these heavy specialist DPS players. They have different DPS players for different situations. Fielding Water a lot of time, who is an amazing player. How we saw people, for example, like Spanik, he pulled off, I do believe, the Doomfist of the team. Then we have people like Kephrii, who was the Widowmaker specialist in general. That's how they framed their team, playing with high and some star DPS players and swapping them out depending on what map they were playing, while Water was more of like a little bit of consistency. So they had Spanik on, for example, I do believe Doomfist, for example, where they needed Doomfist, they pulled out Spanik. They needed a Widowmaker on Ashe, they pulled out Kephrii. That was how they played that team, which was a really, well, it seemed to be working a lot of the time, so they were performing quite well. Now, number 2, how did Kephrii perform himself as we're looking at him? Well, what we need to remember and what we need to know is that he could not communicate efficiently with his team because his team spoke Korean and he speaks English. This does not explain some of his, well, this does explain some of his gameplay decision. However, it doesn't explain all of them. Now, I reached out to Kephrii on Twitter and tried to get him, but he probably saw, 200 followers on Twitter, oh megalol, 10k on YouTube, oh megalol, and didn't answer back or wanted to talk or interview with me or anything like that, or answer any questions from me about this. What I was concerned about was what you did see from Kephrii was that his team could advance and he wouldn't advance with them. He wouldn't be pushing up, taking angles and positioning. He would position far back or not follow or just stay there, being rather useless in some of the team fights per day and not being as active as he should, supporting his team and positioning himself accordingly to how his team was going to play. And while some of that is definitely because of comps, and he did admit that how he was trying to play it was just, I cannot understand these guys, so I'll play it solo queue, I'll try to see what I can do, and I'll be efficient as I can, and that's creds for performing as well as he did with low amount of comps. However, why was there no word for fall back? Why didn't anyone teach him the Korean word for fall back? That's one word that just needs to be repeated. Or advance or push. Or why didn't he teach them the English words and then their shot caller could repeat that English word and the entire team could learn like a couple of English words. 2 or 3 or 4 English words could be called out or could be memorized, and then you would know and then put in the time and effort to actually learn those words to learn certain gameplay stuff. Why wasn't that the aspect of some of the stuff? That is a question that I don't know the answer to, but it seemed, for me at least, a little bit sloppy. When you saw some of his decisions as a Zarya player, you saw some of his decision as a Widowmaker positioning wise, as he wasn't on the same page a lot of time as his team were. Now, he played heroes like Widowmaker and Ashe and a little bit Tracer and also Zarya. His Widowmaker Ashe, and it was incredibly good. Mechanically, they did their stuff. We already talked about the team aspects, and if not, then you can watch Jane go deeper into dive, analyzing one of his VODs, which was a very interesting and really good review of Jane, so I'll link that down there if you want to watch it after. His Tracer was pulled out a little bit. I do believe it was quite decent and pretty good, and we've also know that Kephrii, he is, again, as a hitscan player, he does know how to play Kree. On what level is unknown, but mostly what we saw him was popping up from Widowmaker and Ashe and doing some incredible plays, especially on Ashe, together with Waterfall holding first point, Hollywood, which I did review on stream, which was, again, really, really cool and really good plays. And I don't think that anyone can talk down on him as a Widowmaker player, outside of the fact that he does not always understand, it seems like, how to play as a team or with a team game sense wide, but mechanically, I do believe that this guy could rival the pro players in the league mechanically. We also saw some Zarya, which was questionable. And this is again where you come up to if you want to sign him. If you're looking for someone that can play Zarya and Brig and maybe, you know, maybe some Hog and also can play Soldier Tracer, Widowmaker Ashe, right? And so on and so on, that they can flex onto a lot of stuff, this is not the player for you. However, if you're looking for a hit scan specialist, that is when you will start want to take a look, okay, we need a Widow player because let's say the meta is locked 2-2-2 now. And we need a Widowmaker specialist, so we want to have a Widowmaker specialist on the team for certain maps, for certain strats, against certain teams that we know is going to run a Widow against us. Signing someone like Kephrii and putting resources on teaching him how to actually play this game as a team would then be not a questionable decision, or at least something to try to trial him for, as then you will have mechanically someone that can challenge the tier 1 Widowmakers of the league, a guy that's instantly good at that, and that's why we are signing him. We're not trying to force him to learn to flex, we're trying to sign him to be good on a couple of heroes to fit a very specific, generic but specific scenarios against teams on certain maps with certain strategies, right? Now, there are always pros and there's always cons about being a Widowmaker specialist and having kind of that one-trick stigma to yourself. It's not as important as Widowmakers are very flexible here. A lot of time, you know, to counter Widowmaker, we pick another Widowmaker, and I do believe that there are a lot of potential in someone like Kephrii for an Overwatch League team. So, but if we look at it from that point of view, there still would be a lot of work done, game sense-wise, team plays-wise, that would be needed to do to put in on Kephrii. Again, because I didn't get to talk to him, we only have to go from what we saw from the VODs, and there we did see a lack of game sense and awareness when it came to the more team play aspect of the game. So what can we learn about Kephrii? With the low amount of comms and so on, we did see that solo queue playstyle, which he did talk a lot about. He has a very team-oriented winning mentality where he focuses far more on his team winning than him popping off. Not always, but a lot of time. I do remember seeing multiple times where he got pressured by a Winston. I do not remember on what map, but he got pressured by a Winston. And he could probably have called, and he probably did call, that he needed healing and support and so on. But he probably realized that it's going to take way too much resources on my team to try to save me. And there's a big chance that I won't be saved. And if I die here, we are already struggling in this team fight. It's kind of even. So instead of fighting the Winston and trying to do that, he dropped and he scoped and he got 2 kills and died. And that's kind of, again, the mentality. You also saw him do some risky fighting, which you can call questionable in his decision making of how he played that. But his team was losing, and he came back from spawn. He did a grapple shot, landed on the flank / backline of the enemy team, popped 2 headshot, immediately killing 2 players of the enemy team. Got, of course, punished and killed himself, which I do believe that he understood would happen. But because of that forced, I do believe he killed both their support. That forced the enemy team to reset and lose that fight, buying more time for his team, as he didn't seem to be too high and mighty about him not sacrificing himself to win a team fight. And it seemed like he had that it's winnable and trying to do whatever he can to make the team win and push that. Mechanically a god, and low game sense and lacking still some team play in that aspect, and some solo queue playstyle still being present in his thing, but again, dedicated to it. When it comes to how dedicated he is a player to actually learn this, that's a question he's talked about, that he wants to perform and he wants to play in the Overwatch League. Then again, he also does this stuff like he wanted shortcuts, and that's not something that's too much frowned upon. Everyone just wants to make it to tier 1, of course, but the way that I've seen some of his Twitter statement and heard some talk and so on about it, is that. And also when I saw him, I do believe I saw him review, him reviewing Jane reviewing him on YouTube. I did see some of that where he talked and justified. He does seem a little bit like he doesn't always want to listen to feedback, or he takes the feedback personally. As I do believe I remember, Jane gave his own feedback, like, you see this position, this is not that good, and he immediately started justifying it. Of course, it's important to justify what you're doing and understanding the pros of and cons of what you're doing right there and then. But instead of immediately starting to argue back and so on, rather listen and pay attention to someone that's a valid coach and so on. And as I said, dedicating time to Overwatch League means dedicating time to Overwatch League, and dedicating time to the team. That means living at the gaming house all the time, and not being able to be home with the wife and so on. And that's what it means to be an Overwatch League player, to dedicate time and time and time and time on scrimming and playing and scrimming and playing, which is something that I'm not 200% sure that Kephrii would be 100% interested in. But that's, again, a personal thing without being able to talk to the guy himself. Is there a pro career for Kephrii? That's the big question. I do believe, yes, if he is motivated enough to it, and there's a team that needs a Widowmaker specialist, a hit scan specialist that can play Widow, that can play Ashe, that can play Kree. If you're looking for someone like that in your team, in your meta, for example, doing a Widow meta or something like that, and you have the resources to teach him more how to play as a team, as you have such a good foundation mechanically on the guy. If you have that, I believe, yes, this is a guy that you then could look and try out for an Overwatch League team, as I do believe he could rival he could rival the tier 1 Widowmakers mechanically. Now, at that point, he just needs a good supporting structure, and of course him himself to be dedicated enough and show interested enough in pushing that. Now, that's my personal opinion. I would love to hear what you guys think about Kephrii down in the comments section below. Very sorry this come longer out. I would love to have made a deep dive analyze. That was actually the original plan, to make it like a 40-minute video showing examples of a gameplay and so on. That's just not something that is viable on YouTube. I might do more reviews on that on stream later on, even though the meta is a little bit stale. If he plays competitively again, I might do another review of him on my Twitch stream. But as always, guys, like and subscribe, but hit that bell notification on Discord server, Twitter and Twitch and all that stuff, link down in the description. And if you're interested in hiring me as a private coach, it's 50 euros for a 2-hour session. Doesn't matter if you're bronze or top 500, doesn't matter if you play for a team or not. As long as you can get a bot to me, I can review it, coach, and help you improve and get better at the game. I love you guys very much. Please stay positive, take care, stay awesome, and as always, guys, keep the enemy in your crosshair.